Oh boy. So the teaser for Resident Evil 2026 just dropped. About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I know I'm late. Welcome to the channel. Typically, I try to avoid content on upcoming media to avoid spoilers and a spoiler-happy algorithm. But this is just a teaser, so what the hell? Well,
Oh my god.
it's not looking good, y'all.
It's awful!
The teaser itself looks good, but it doesn't look Resident Evil. Maybe a little RE7 with Ethan approaching the Baker estate? Maybe a little RE4 with Leon approaching the first shacks?
But just take a look at this.
What in the Silent Hill is this? Anyway, we follow Brian, played by Austin Abrams of Weapons fame, and an entirely new creation for this film. All signs point that he will be the main protagonist, and that this film will be sans our beloved protagonists. Now, that's not entirely a negative. After all, Alice was an original character in Resident Evil 2002, and she was a welcome addition to the lore. At least for the first film, before she went all Mary Matrix Sue. The only things in the teaser that resemble Resident Evil are the time frame, which seems to take place in the 90s, though in winter as opposed to fall, frantic item searching, and some weapon progression. Sprinkling Easter eggs is always a nice touch. Empty shotgun here, green herb there, but it ain't enough. Now granted, this is only a teaser, so everything we see here, and the entirety of my commentary, could literally be nothing of importance. Some comments have pointed out that this resembles more of the story of a random NPC on whom we find supplies, rather than that of an actual protagonist. And that about sums up the vibe that the teaser gave off. Zach Kreger, the film's director, who scored a huge hit with the aforementioned weapons in 2025, stated that he is a huge fan of the games and aims for this film to be a love letter to them.
And it's really like a love letter to the games because I love those games, and so it's kind of my kind of homage to them.
That this film will be unlike any other Resident Evil film to date. All of which sounds great up until you realize that the other films, bad as most of them were, did present to us some decent moments. After all, they were also love letters to the games from their respective directors and cast. Kreger also stated to have never watched any of those films. In an interview with Polygon, he stated about the previous films, "I was such a fan of the games, and they just didn't look like the games to me. Maybe they're great? I have no idea. But I just wasn't interested because what's great about the games is they're shrunk down into a single perspective. It's about pacing and horror. And those movies just didn't look like horror to me." I mostly agree with that sentiment, except for the fact that the games aren't from a single perspective. RE1 through 6 all have multiple protagonists. Even the single protagonist entries like RE4 and 5 allow you to play as a secondary character at some point. Okay, so RE5 is more of a co-op than multi-protagonist, but Sheva does offer a different perspective from Chris about the events unfolding before them. So how can you know that it won't be like the previous films? And how can you guarantee that you won't make the same mistakes if you haven't watched any of those films to learn what audiences loved and hated about them? So what is your criterion for fidelity and success? To what standard are you comparing this film? What if you conjure an amazing idea that translates fantastically on film, but was already done by a previous film and was universally loathed by fans?
Austin Abrams, who played James, is going to be my guy. So it's just Austin is the movie. We had an amazing thing together, and I think it's a weird, fun, just like wild story.
Yeah. He's probably gonna take a lot of liberties with the source material, isn't he? Any person who claims to be a diehard fan of the games has watched the films for better or worse. As a matter of fact, any diehard fan of any franchise makes the attempt to consume as much media created of said franchise. That's how fandoms tend to work. But those aren't the only things that worry me about the film. Kreger has also stated,
"The reason that I keep coming back to 4 is because the world is so big, the game is so huge, the mechanics are fantastic. I find it so relentlessly playable."
So Resident Evil 4 is iconic because it revolutionized not only gaming, but also Resident Evil and third-person, over-the-shoulder, action-oriented shooters. Emphasis on action. I love Resident Evil 4, but it is the least Resident Evil of Resident Evils up until that point. Resident Evil became more accessible to general gamers because this is when the franchise veered from survival horror into action horror. And I do have to point out that this is why watching the previous films can be beneficial, because anybody who has watched those films and has played the games knows that Resident Evil 4 took some inspirations from them, especially RE 2002. Specifically, the very action-oriented, iconic laser hallway scene. Bro's favorite Resident Evil entry took vast inspirations from the films that he refuses to watch.
It's going to be just a rock'em sock'em. It's for me to play.
So action horror?
Austin is very much like an avatar for me, or what I expect the average video game player, how they would react if they were thrust into the game themselves.
So it's a self-insert. It's just his experience with the games. Now, that's not necessarily a bad idea, but I do believe I speak for most when I say that as much as we want more Resident Evil stories set in Raccoon City, we still crave that fateful, grade A, live-action Raccoon City Saga adaptation. We need to establish that baseline first before we proceed with original content.
So he's just a normal guy. He's not particularly good at combat in any way, shape, or form.
So Silent Hill?
He's athletic, but he's not an athlete. He's just a guy. He's just a good-natured, hapless dude who gets sucked into a nightmare.
So Silent Hill.
It's like this movie follows a person from point A to point B. It's just like a real-time foot journey where you just go deeper and deeper into the depths of hell.
So Silent Hill. Now, I'm stretching that last point. That was just a metaphor. Bro isn't beating the I directed a film in the wrong franchise allegations. Me personally, I honestly do not care if the creators are fans or not, so long as they respect the source material and give us a lore-accurate, grade A quality product. Oftentimes, people who are fans or have experience in certain fields or subjects tend to believe that they already know everything that they need to know about said field or subject, which translates to neglecting proper research because they feel as though they already are the experts in the field. But you have to double check your work. After all, most people involved in the previous films, from Resident Evil 2002 to Welcome to Raccoon City, have also claimed to be huge fans of the games. And how did those turn out? Exactly. To date, the most faithful adaptation is still the very first one, RE 2002. Even with all of its flaws, I stand by that statement. Every other film, from Apocalypse to Work, have all been no more than original IPs with a Resident Evil overlay. And that's exactly how this new film feels. Like an original IP with the Resident Evil name slapped on it. So, more of the same. RE 2002 undoubtedly had its flaws. The effects were embarrassingly dated even on release date. The score is not only mostly rock, but it is the heaviest of rocks. The opposite of the iconic atmospheric tone of the games. Except for the main theme, of course. Not to mention, it lacked Resident Evil protagonists, but it did incorporate plenty of gameplay elements and references to be a believable precursor to the Mansion incident. Plus, director Paul W.S. Anderson and top-billed cast Mila Jovovich and Michelle Rodriguez all played the games long before a film was even greenlit, and all subsequently fought for their roles in the film, emphasizing their commitment to lore fidelity.
Now that is devotion.
Before I get sidetracked lacing Resident Evil 2002 again, remember that comment I mentioned about this feeling like the story of a random NPC? Well, that got me thinking, hey, what if this is just a random NPC? What if this is just a cold open? What if, in the finished product, we follow Brian throughout the opening sequence from his car crash to his arrival at the haunted house, down Main Street, into the sewers, encountering what someone in the comments described as Mr. X, draw large, cut to black, and then title card. Cut to our actual protagonists, proceed with a lore-accurate film, and at some point later on, they come across this poor fool who thought he'd be a Resident Evil protagonist and acquire a first aid kit from his original character corpse, and maybe a diary or note. Krager did state that this story could take place concurrently with the RPD incident, just in a different side of town, so it is entirely possible. That would not only make up for the lack of Resident Evilness in the teaser, but it would also be an amazing subversion of expectations. And now, I am sorry if I got your hopes up, because that probably will not be the case. We won't know until the actual trailers drop. Until then, and unlike Zach Kreger, I am always excited for new Resident Evil in any medium.
Okay.
So I'll see you all then. I have to go. I love you all. Bye.